Hey folks, it's Brian Bledsoe once again. A big thanks to the Texas Alliance for Water Conservation and Texas Tech University for having me be a part of your program once again. It's a pleasure, as always, even if I can't be here in person, but to be with you virtually for the good of water planning, drought planning, and however you use the information that I provide as far as long-range weather is concerned. And we are in a heap of trouble in some parts of the region in terms of moisture. You don't need me to tell you that. But folks in West Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and the Four Corners area up toward Colorado are really at the crux of the regional drought situation that has continued to unfold over the past several months. Now, there have been a few storm systems make their way through the area in recent weeks that have helped the problem at least a little bit. But bottom line, the better moisture has set up east of our main area here of West Texas. That's no surprise given the La Nina situation that's unfolding. And I don't think that that has a whole lot of good chance of changing, at least in the near term. So bottom line, let's go to what's been happening the past 60 days. This is the percentage of precipitation in terms of normal, if you will, or average. And you can see the past 60 days, there's stripes of moisture that have been prevailing across parts of Texas up in Oklahoma, but especially east and southeast Texas, which is traditional for a La Nina episode to be the wettest part of this region. Has obviously been the biggest beneficiary of the pattern. You go farther west, New Mexico has been a pretty big disaster in terms of the lack of moisture over the past couple of months or so. In terms of the El Nino and La Nina situation, well, you can look off the west coast of South America and you see all that blue and green right there. That's our old friend La Nina, which has been taking shape and has really had a foothold on not only the oceanic pattern, but the atmospheric pattern off and on over the past several months. And I don't see that changing a whole lot. So kind of what you see is what you get in terms of the La Nina episode. And if you look to where La Nina usually ends up being the driest, it's usually during the back part of winter and into the spring months is where it becomes a real problem. So if La Nina continues, as I think it will, that will probably be the driest part of this whole deal before we can hopefully start to pull ourselves back out of it. But even then, there's no guarantee, as I'll show you here in just a little bit. Moderate to strong La Nina ongoing right there. That's the sea surface temperature anomaly map that's been going on for the past several weeks since the back part of November. And it has really shown no signs of weakening. In fact, if anything, it's strengthened over the past couple of weeks, which is typical where we get through the heart of the winter months. That's where the La Nina episode is the strongest, and then it gradually starts to taper off after that. We'll see if that actually takes place here with some of the computer model information that I'm looking at. However, the way these models are shaking out, all of those lines are various computer models that we look at in terms of La Nina forecasting or El Nino forecasting or simply neutral forecasting, which it can sometimes be, is obviously what we are looking at to suggest that this La Nina episode has a very good chance to persist through the spring months. And some of the models say it's going to continue even beyond that. But in general, the average of these models brings us back toward neutral as we head into the early part of the summer. With the damage already being done and soil moisture being a problem likely by that time as well, I'm not saying that the drought situation will improve dramatically over a short period of time right in there. It's just kind of a progressive thing that we kind of have to monitor going forward. The Pacific Decadal Oscillation is a big driver as far as drought is concerned in the western and southwest high plains. And this is just a snapshot of what it's been doing over the past 20 years. And those blue spikes that you see right there, that's where the Pacific Decadal Oscillation is in its colder phase. Where you're seeing those red spikes, that's where it's in its warmer phase. And usually, when the PDO is in a warm phase, we don't have to worry about moisture a lot of times. When it's in its cooler phase, even if it's for a short period of time, that's when we have to worry about drought possibly getting a hold not only just over the region, but in some cases over a large part of the country, like it is right now across the western United States. So you go all the way back to the year 2000, or about 20 years ago, and you can see off and on over the past 20 years, we have had more blue spikes on there than we have had red. And that's an indicator to just simply how much drought that we've had to deal with off and on over the past several years, where the El Nino episodes, while at times have been fairly strong or significant, they just haven't been that long lasting. And the colder period has obviously offset the warmer period, which is why we've been dealing with drought off and on. If you want more information on this takes a little bit of time to break down. I want you to email me or contact me, and we can talk more about this and how I've used the PDO off and on over the past several years to help folks establish a good drought plan and be able to recognize that when we get cold in this particular oscillation, That's usually when we have trouble. And it's no exception right here. You can see where the PDO has been cold lately, and that's why we've been dealing with some drought issues over the western and the southwestern portion of the country. Let's talk about some computer model information here. And this is the North American Multi-Model Ensemble. This is the forecast it has for February. The brown is obviously drier than average, the white average, the green wetter than average. And you can see at least the southern part of California, across the desert Southwest, into Texas, Colorado, Kansas, and the Panhandle region. That's where this particular model suggests we have a pretty good chance of being at least drier than average during the month of February. If we look into March, it's basically the same story. It's that same area that struggles during the late winter and spring months when La Nina is present that likely has the greatest chance to be drier than average. And with this particular model, it's indicating as such, and it doesn't have a whole lot of reason to change that as long as the La Nina still has us in its grip, which I likely think that it will. If we go into April, a very similar setup, but the drier signal actually starts to move northwest just a little bit. You can see it kind of controlling the Four Corners area. And again, that's where the regional drought is the strongest and has been so. So where it is driest right now, that stands to reason that that's likely where it will be driest during the back part of whatever this La Nina ends up doing as we head into the middle part of 2021. The May forecast still indicates a good chance of drier than average conditions over the same areas that are dealing with drought right now. Some of that might even expand a little bit to the east. If we go into June, that signal relaxes a little bit, which is good news, but it doesn't completely go away. And you know as well as anybody, when we head into the crux of summer, well, our thunderstorm chances obviously go down, and we kind of set up into the hot, dry pattern that usually controls a large part of Texas during that time, and a large part of the southwest high plains. Even into July, there's still going to be at least some sort of drier than average signal going on across parts of the region. It's just shifted it a little bit into the center portion of the country. So not exactly good news at all in terms of this particular model and in terms of the forecast that is printing out. So let's look at another computer model and show you what we think is going to happen with it. And this is the Euro seasonal model. It's the same scale here. Brown is drier than average. The green is wetter than average. And this is, again, the February forecast that shows the same areas that the previous model was showing as being drier than average on this particular model. Again, it doesn't have a whole lot of reason to argue with it given the situation. So if we go into March, you can see that drier than average signal is very present from California across the southwestern part of the country, right through the southern plains, and even over the southeast part of the country might actually have some drier than average conditions during that time, with the storm track diverting farther to the north, Pacific Northwest, parts of the northern Rockies, and the upper Midwest being the biggest beneficiary from this pattern. If we go into the month of, into the month of May, is that right? Are we going into the month of May here? Yeah, it's the way this looks. We are going to be dealing with that it's going to be drier than average during that time, or I should say March into April. April here shows a similar pattern. And that's going to be what we are really looking at going forward, is when this drier than average signal kind of tends to go away. That would be at least a little bit of good news if we could get some moisture in here. But this model also doesn't show it going away until we get later on in the forecast, probably sometime during the summer. But even then, parts of the region you can see right here don't completely break down from the dryness. And you know as well as anybody that when drought gets a foothold, drought begets drought. It's a very tough pattern to break, especially when it is as significant as it is right now across parts of the southwestern United States. It tends to grow, especially when the weather pattern isn't conducive to it breaking, even during the winter time. So going forward, even into the summer months, we're still talking about drier than average conditions being portrayed by this particular computer model, which is obviously not a good thing well into the summertime. So I wish I had better news on this front, but even as we head into July, where maybe some monsoonal moisture starts to work its way through western portions of New Mexico, eastern Arizona, and on up into Colorado, it depends on where that ridge of high pressure sets up over Texas or a little bit farther to the east, how much relief we would actually get across West Texas during that time. Pardon my skepticism here, but as I said, when you get a drought to have a foothold like it is just simply something that's hard to break down. And a lot of times the models don't pick up exactly when it will break either. So that becomes kind of my job to see the pattern and at least recognize it. So bottom line, folks, you see what I'm driving at here as far as the drought situation is concerned. It has me concerned. It's had me concerned since last year when I spoke to a lot of you about this particular setup taking place where the rain would shut off, and then we would obviously have bigger problems going forward. So if you've had moisture recently, consider yourself lucky. That's a good thing because it hasn't been widespread enough to help really eliminate or really even put a dent in the ongoing drought situation. And I would think that we obviously have good reason to plan accordingly for more dry times than not, at least during the first part of 2021. And then we'll see where we are during the back part. But if you have to have a drought plan and if you have to make plans going forward, I've told my family up in Eastern Colorado, you've got to be prepared for what's to come because I don't think we are close to being out of this, at least as of yet. My email address, you can see it right there. Feel free to email me at any time. My Twitter handle right there. I know a lot of you contact me via Twitter. You can direct message me. You can hit me up on that anytime you want. And obviously, if we have questions coming up on the way, I'll do my best to answer those. But in the meantime, I hope you enjoyed the presentation. If you need weather for your business, please ask me for a quote, send an email. I have clients scattered all over the region, whether it is private interests or company interests, municipal interests, and whatnot. And I just do my best to help things out when it comes to long-range weather and at least tailoring some sort of forecast for your risk management toolbox that will help you at least weather times like this in a little bit better fashion. Again, thank you guys for having me today, and be well.